Hello and welcome to another episode of Hair Bear Reads Reddit. And if you found your way to my cozy little corner of the internet, and you like a story or two, sit back and relax, have a listen, have a laugh, take your shoes off, and set a spell. So I've mentioned before that I like balance, I like symmetry. And that being the case, petty revenge is kind of my jam. So I was really excited when I found out about this subreddit, r/traumatize them back, which appears at first glance to simply be a subreddit full of short, punchy stories that are all rated with the heading, and I quote, delicious revenge. Let's check this out. Our first story is posted by Alien Ace Cat, and it's titled, Sis Owned a Fat-Shaming Bully. First post here, but I needed to share this story. It's too good. This happened almost 20 years ago, when we were both at university, but you don't easily forget about something this satisfying. My sister, 19 female at the time, was cutting across a parking lot towards the student center when a guy in a car she happened to be passing in front of leaned out the window and yelled, "Move it, fat ass!" Sis has lost a lot of weight now, but she was a pretty big girl when she was younger, and despite being pretty and athletic, she had been bullied a lot for her weight all through high school. She told me later that somehow, that day, watching the guy and his buddy pointing and laughing, it was the last straw, and something in her just snapped. She stopped in her tracks, leaned over the hood, looked at him right in the eye, and said, "No, apologize." And then she just stood there and waited. The car was parked between two other cars and up against the curb in the back, so he couldn't get out without hitting her. She had him trapped in, and no matter how he yelled at her and he called her names and laid on the horn, she just stood there, repeating, "Apologize, and I will move." When he got out of the car and started getting in her face, trying to intimidate her, she sat down on the ground and told him to move her if he thought he could lift her fat ass. By now, a small crowd had gathered, which was probably good since who knows what he might have done without witnesses, but also excellent because it didn't take long for people to figure out what was going on and started heckling him. He was red-faced, fuming, pacing, and shouting. His buddy threatened to call the cops, and I guess Sis was just going for it at this point, and said, "Go ahead, call them." So he did. That might have been the end of it, but karma was on her side that day, because the cop that showed up was a friend of hers. He knew this wasn't like her and asked her what the hell was going on. The jerk must have had his pride mortally wounded already, still red-faced and practically vibrating with anger and humiliation. But when the cop, after listening to both their stories, turned to him in front of the whole crowd and said, "Just apologize already," he suddenly deflated like a popped balloon. He finally turned to her, eyes downcast, and said between gritted teeth, "Fine, I'm sorry." And Sis didn't rub it in his face or get the last word, but like the queen she is, calmly got up and moved out of the way, as she said she would. The guy and his buddy had nothing to say after that, and left in a hurry with a dispersing crowd laughing and shouting after him as he drove off. The cop told her to please never do that again, and my sister took her glorious, fat, victorious ass off to the student center with a new bounce in her step. Reckless, yes, but I will never get tired of hearing her tell people about it. Not the safest choices, but sometimes you just have no choice but to traumatize them back. Now, the first point I would want to make is to agree with OP's last sentiment in that it was a bit reckless, and at several points throughout the story, if different choices were made, it could have gone badly. And that being said, when you get the kind of troll like this who will hurl an insult, leave a nasty comment, and then scuttle away like a cockroach, sometimes the best thing to do is hold up the light for everyone to see them for what they are, which is exactly what OP's sister did, and well done her. But if you can stand up for yourself, try to do it safely. Our next story is titled, Coworker Wouldn't Get the Hint, posted by Picture Known. So I started this job about 4 months ago, and I decided that this was a new start. I wasn't going to share any of my personal business. Context on that. My mom worked with me at my last job, and she ended up taking a get-out-of-life free ticket, and everyone knew. So I really just decided everything would be surface level. This one coworker, though, always asked why I moved out so young, constantly. I'm female, 19. and I would always just say personal preference, or keep it short. One day, though, he's asking again, but then he goes on to say, "You should have just moved in with your parents. You're so young." I turned and snapped, "Well, my only parent was my mom, and she's gone." He hasn't bothered me since. Nobody has any right to know more about someone else's personal life than they are willing to share. And if someone is not willing to share, if they've demonstrated, even on 1 or 2 occasions, they're not willing to share, they probably have a reason. And I cannot overstate this point enough. You don't get to decide if their reason is good enough. Down in the comments, TX Rose 218 makes a good point as well and says, "Unfortunately, a great many men think of this as a challenge." And yes, a womanizing mentality is the same as a salesman mentality. They believe there's a yes somewhere under all the no's. And sometimes the only way you've got to show them that there isn't is to just shut them down. Our next one is a repost from Am I the A-Hole with a lot of upvotes, so this ought to be a good one. Originally posted by Equipment Dependent 17, and it's titled, "Am I the A-Hole for mocking my cousin's bald patches in front of his new girlfriend and causing her to dump him?" I gotta say, first off, did she not notice? I would think that unless he was trying to cover him up with that spray hair or a wig or something, that she would notice. If anything, she's doing the girlfriend a solid. But at any rate, let's get into it. I am 17 female. My parents and I went to a dinner at my aunt's house. I didn't want to go because my 35-year-old cousin Jared likes to make fun of my appearance. I'm tall and skinny. But my dad convinced me to go. Jared was already at the dinner table and introducing his girlfriend Melody to everyone. He surprisingly didn't make fun of me like he usually does when we first see each other. Now I was told by Jared's sister that Jared shaved off all his hair 2 years ago. Oh, well, there we go. Because he was getting bald patches and was embarrassed about them. I suppose that answers my question. That's me told. So anyway, during dinner, Jared finally turned his attention to me at the time when everyone was quiet and asked me loudly, "Hey, OP, do you think you'll ever put on some weight? You're starting to look anorexic." I just snapped and said, "I don't know. Do you think you'll ever grow hair where your bald spots are?" He got angry and started cussing me, and I asked him if he had a spare brush for me so I could brush my hair. He was told to leave, so him and Melody left. Melody apparently broke up with him that night. Now I'm getting the blame. Am I the a-hole? Now, I really don't think Melody broke up with him because, she found out he had bald patches. I think because she found out what a dick he was. So, yeah, I'm gonna say OP is not the a-hole. Let's see, where are we on our a-hole rating? Okay, let's put that up. So yeah, I think we all agree that OP gets a pass on this one, but her cousin doesn't get away scot-free. I think I would put this somewhere between 7 and 8. He's kind of straddling the definitions here because it is kind of low-level a-holishness, then best avoided. And that's what OP tried to do. But when she couldn't, she put him in his place. So 7.5. Yeah, let's do 7.5. So let's finish things off today with another delicious revenge titled, "Don't You Know the Japanese Are War Criminals?" Posted by Silver Toilet. You can see how it's spelled. I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced, but anyhow, people trying to be all clever with their usernames. Meh. So sometime back, I was talking to someone I didn't know very well otherwise, just making small talk. I mentioned that I was learning Japanese, partially to prepare for a trip to Japan. I was in the early stages of planning. They responded very angrily. They shamed me for wanting to learn Japanese just because it's trendy now, when Japan is a societal hellhole full of war criminals who have never even apologized for World War II. The Japanese people are horrible and cold, and that I must be a weeboo who is either unaware or uncaring of reality and history. I let them finish their rant before responding that I'm actually going on a family trip, and that only half of my family in Tokyo, Saitama, speaks English, so I thought learning some Japanese might make it easier to communicate. I've never seen anyone get that pale that fast. They walked away and never talked to me again. And good riddance, too. My God. You're judging an entire country of people based on a war in the 1940s. And at the risk of showing my ignorance and nerdiness, am I the only one that saw Saitama and thought, yeah, One Punch Man, hell yeah. But has anything like this ever happened to you? Have you ever had the perfect clapback in the moment that most people only come up with 2 days later in the shower? If you do, leave the story in the comments and share it with us. And if you like this video, make sure you slap a paw on the like and subscribe button. And hopefully, we'll see you all in the next one. Until then, take care, be good, and bear up.